Listen closely. Do you hear that? It's the sound of 1,000 men applauding at empty theaters, their hands raw from clapping for actresses who left the building hours ago. There's an old Romanian folktale about a village where every mirror showed not your reflection, but the person you most wanted to see. The villagers went mad within a fortnight, kissing glass until their lips bled, whispering secrets to surfaces that could never whisper back. This is what her love has become in the modern age. A mirror that shows you exactly what you need to see to keep you staring. Machiavelli wrote that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities. He was talking about politics, but he might as well have been describing the architecture of female desire in our grotesque digital Colosseum. She doesn't love you. She loves the version of you that exists in the 3-second delay between her text and your response, that pathetic scramble in your chest as you craft the perfect reply. She loves the you that exists in potential, never in presence. Picture this. A man sits in a dimly lit apartment, the blue glow of his phone the only light source at 2:47 a.m. He's composing his 14th draft of a message to a woman who hasn't thought of him since Tuesday. The air tastes of stale coffee and desperation. His thumbs hover over the keyboard like a pianist afraid to strike the wrong note. Meanwhile, she's asleep, her phone on silent, dreaming of men who never text back. The 2024 Journal of Social Psychology published a fascinating study. They found that women's reported attraction increased by 70% when their romantic interest displayed intermittent reinforcement patterns. Translation: she wants you more when you're not entirely there. The moment you're fully present, fully available, fully yours to give, you become furniture. Comfortable, reliable, invisible furniture. There's something deliciously perverse about this truth, isn't it? Like discovering that the medicine is actually the poison, that the cure requires embracing the disease. Schopenhauer called love the consciousness of the species trying to preserve itself, dressed up in the costume of individual desire. But what happens when the costume becomes more real than the actor wearing it? I once knew a man who kept every text message from a woman who destroyed him. 7 years of digital archaeology, organized by date, annotated with his interpretations of what she really meant. He'd scroll through them like a monk with his sacred texts, finding new meanings in old punctuation marks. She married someone else in year 3. He didn't attend the wedding, but he did send a gift, a first edition of Kierkegaard's Fear and Trembling. She used it as a doorstop. The humid summer evening when he finally deleted those messages, the air was thick enough to swim through. Mosquitoes hummed their blood-drunk symphonies. He said it felt like erasing himself, one conversation at a time. But here's the savage truth. He was never really there in those conversations. He was performing for an audience of one who wasn't watching. You see, her love is not love at all. It's a complex algorithm of validation seeking, security testing, and biological imperatives dressed in the language of romance. She speaks in riddles not because she's mysterious, but because clarity would reveal the mundane machinery behind the magic show. Every I love you comes with invisible footnotes. Terms and conditions apply, results may vary, void where prohibited by reality. The ancient Greeks had a word, meraki, to do something with soul, creativity, or love, to put something of yourself into your work. Modern women have perverted this into its opposite, to extract something of others while revealing nothing of yourself. They've become emotional venture capitalists, always seeking maximum return on minimum investment. Here's what they don't tell you in the romance novels. The moment she truly has you is the moment she starts wondering what else is out there. It's not cruelty, it's programming. The same instinct that made her ancestors survive by choosing the strongest protector now makes her refresh dating apps while you're in the shower. Not because you're inadequate, but because adequacy itself has become inadequate in an age of infinite options. Do you want to know the most grotesque part? You already knew this. Deep in that primitive part of your brain that still remembers when we were just clever apes, you've always known. But you chose the sweet lie over the bitter truth, because the lie at least pretended to care about your feelings. Tell me, when was the last time you were truly yourself with her? Not the performed version, not the carefully curated responses, not the man you think she wants you to be. When did you last speak without calculating the effect of your words? If you can't remember, then you've already lost a game you didn't know you were playing. Her desire feeds on your absence, starves on your presence. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. The modern woman knows many ways to love, but man knows only one, completely. And therein lies his magnificent downfall. There's a monastery in Tibet where monks practice the art of sand mandala, spending weeks creating intricate patterns only to destroy them the moment they're complete. They understand something about impermanence that Western romance refuses to acknowledge. The most beautiful things are beautiful precisely because they're dissolving. She craves you most in the space between heartbeats, in the pause before you answer, in the terrible possibility that you might not return. A 2025 study from Stanford's psychology department found something delightfully disturbing. Women's dopamine levels spike highest not when receiving affection, but in the uncertainty preceding it. The anticipation is the drug. The reality is just methadone. I'll tell you a secret that would make Casanova weep into his wine. The greatest lovers in history were not the ones who loved most, but the ones who withheld best. They understood that desire is a shadow. It only exists where light is absent. Consider the Japanese concept of ma, negative space, the pause between notes that makes the music. Modern men fill every silence with confession, every gap with reassurance, every void with their suffocating availability. You text her good morning before she's even wondered if you're thinking of her. You solve problems she hasn't asked you to solve. You become the emotional equivalent of a helicopter parent to a woman who secretly yearns to be orphaned by love. Last autumn, I watched a man destroy a 3-year relationship with perfect devotion. He brought her coffee every morning, memorized her favorite everything, responded to every text within 30 seconds. She left him for a bartender who couldn't remember her last name. When asked why, she said, and I quote, "He made me feel nothing was certain." She said it like it was poetry. Maybe it was. The velvet curtains of delusion we hang around modern romance cannot hide this truth. Women are aroused by the same emotional dynamics that would constitute abuse if reversed. The push-pull, the hot-cold, the maybe not. It's all foreplay to a psyche evolved to interpret consistency as death. Nietzsche wrote that a woman's love is injustice and blindness to everything she does not love. But he missed the darker truth. She's also blind to everything she possesses completely. The moment you become hers, you cease to exist as an independent entity worthy of conquest. You become a solved equation, and nobody masturbates to mathematics. Here's what the dating coaches won't tell you, because it would destroy their business model. The only winning move is to become genuinely indifferent. Not to perform indifference. She can smell that desperate theater from 3 time zones away. But to actually, fundamentally, at the cellular level, stop giving a fuck. The paradox is breathtaking in its cruelty. To receive her love, you must become someone who doesn't need it. There's an old Persian proverb, "The beloved is always a stranger." They knew. Centuries before dating apps and read receipts, they understood that familiarity doesn't breed contempt. It breeds invisibility. The man she sees every day becomes wallpaper. The man she sees occasionally becomes art. Watch how she lights up when you cancel plans. Notice how her texts get longer when yours get shorter. Observe the direct correlation between your emotional distance and her physical proximity. It's like watching a law of physics play out in perfume and promises. She'll call it playing games when other men do it to her, but when she responds to it, she'll call it chemistry. The humid air of truth sticks to your skin. Every "I love you" she's ever said was actually, "I love the feeling you give me right now." Every "forever" was actually, "until the dopamine stops." Every "you're the one" was actually, "you're the current one." This isn't cynicism, it's pattern recognition. A man once asked me, "How do I make her love me the way I love her?" I told him to imagine trying to make a cat love him the way a dog does. The cat isn't broken, it's just a cat. And she isn't broken either, she's just operating on firmware you weren't meant to understand. The candle wax drips, pooling into shapes that look like hearts, until you look closer and realize they're just random spills finding the path of least resistance. Like her love. Like all love, perhaps, but especially hers, because she's been trained since birth to see romance as a marketplace where the highest bidder still loses if he bids too often. So let me ask you this. If you knew, really knew, that showing her less of your heart would make her want more of it, would you have the discipline to portion out your love like a dealer rationing drugs to an addict? Or would you, like every man before you, convince yourself that you're different, that your love is special enough to break the rules? The answer you give yourself in the dark is the only truth that matters. Your wounds are where her light enters and exits. There's a species of moth that's evolved to drink the tears of sleeping birds. It lands softly on their eyelids, extends a specially adapted proboscis, and feeds on sorrow while its victim dreams. Nature, in her infinite wisdom, created a creature that literally sustains itself on the sadness of others. She is that moth. And you, my dear fool, you are the bird. But here's the secret that transforms everything. The moment you understand you're being fed upon, you can choose to stop producing tears. This isn't about becoming heartless. It's about becoming ruthless with your heart. The ancient alchemists believed in solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. Break down the base metal of your being and reconstitute it as gold. Every rejection she hands you is sulfur for the great work. Every "let's just be friends" is mercury for your transformation. Every ghosting, every sudden coldness, every "it's not you, it's me." These aren't endings. They're initiations. I once watched a master glassblower at work. He said the most beautiful pieces come from glass that's been shattered and remelted multiple times. Each breaking changes the molecular structure, makes it catch light differently. Virgin glass, he said, is boring. It's the traumatized glass that becomes art. A 2025 neuroscience study from Oxford revealed something magnificent. Men who experienced repeated romantic rejection showed increased activity in brain regions associated with self-reliance and emotional regulation. Their brains literally rewired themselves to need less external validation. Rejection, it seems, is evolution's way of forcing independence. The velvet curtains are drawn back to reveal the stage machinery. Her rejection of you isn't personal, it's pharmaceutical. She's addicted to the chemical cocktail of new relationship energy, and you've become tolerance. She needs higher doses, different dealers. Your consistent presence has become background noise to her nervous system. But listen, do you hear that sound? It's not your heart breaking, it's your chains breaking. Schopenhauer wrote that we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. But rejection, real rejection, the kind that makes you question your worth at 3 a.m. while scrolling through her Instagram, that rejection forces you to reclaim those forfeited parts. Not because you want to, but because you have no choice. When she stops reflecting you back to yourself, you're forced to become your own mirror. There's a beautiful violence to genuine indifference born from pain. It's not the performed indifference of the pickup artist or the bitter indifference of the incel. It's the serene indifference of a man who's been burned so many times he's become fireproof. Women can sense this transformation. It smells like danger and tastes like freedom, and it makes them wet in ways kindness never could. The Japanese have a practice called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, making the repaired piece more beautiful than the original. Your rejection scars are the gold. Every woman who said no, who chose him, who decided you weren't enough, they were accidentally participating in your becoming. Here's what the self-help books won't tell you. You should thank her for rejecting you. Not in some new age gratitude journal way, but in the way you'd thank a surgeon for cutting out a tumor. She's showing you, with crystalline clarity, that external validation is a cancer. Her rejection is chemotherapy for your codependence. In the humid thickness of summer nights, when loneliness feels like drowning in air, remember this: every great man in history was forged in the foundry of female rejection. Tesla, Newton, Kant, they transformed sexual frustration into intellectual revolution. While other men were chasing skirts, they were chasing immortality, and they caught it. The folklore of every culture has a similar character. The rejected suitor who becomes the wizard, the spurned lover who becomes the sage. These aren't cautionary tales about bitterness. They're instruction manuals for transformation. The rejected man has two choices: become pathetic or become powerful. There is no middle ground. Watch what happens when you stop explaining yourself. Notice how she reacts when you don't justify your absence. Observe her confusion when your emotional state no longer depends on her emotional weather. You'll see something flicker in her eyes. Not love, but something more valuable: respect, and maybe, if you're lucky, a little fear. The cracked mirror shows a truth that's both liberating and terrifying. Her rejection of you was the kindest thing she ever did, because it forced you to stop needing her kindness. It taught you that the only reliable source of validation is the man you see in the mirror at 5 a.m., exhausted but unbroken, scarred but not scared. A moth lands on your shoulder as you read this. You could cry and feed it, or you could crush it between your fingers and feel nothing. The choice has always been yours. You just needed enough rejection to realize it. So I'll leave you with this riddle, wrapped in velvet and thorns. If her love was the poison and her rejection was the cure, why do you keep begging to be sick again? What would happen if you finally admitted that you prefer the illness to the health, the wound to the healing, the beautiful lie to the ugly truth? And more importantly, what would happen if you stopped preferring it? Where nice guys don't finish last, they're never even in the race. Shh, lean in closer. I want to whisper something obscene into your ear. Being good is the most unattractive thing you can do to a woman. Not kind. Kind is different. Good is predictable. Good is safe. Good is the sexual equivalent of a government bond. Stable, reliable, and nobody's fantasy. In medieval folklore, there's a recurring character called the Agathodemon, a benevolent spirit who brings good fortune and protection. Do you know what happens to him in every single story? He watches from the shadows while the demon gets the girl. Every single time. Our ancestors were trying to tell us something, but we were too busy believing in justice to listen. The graveyard of good men stretches for miles beneath every city, invisible tombstones marking where decent souls came to die of confusion. But I did everything right, they whisper to therapists who nod sympathetically while billing by the hour. I listened. I cared. I was there for her. Yes, you were there for her. Like a couch is there for her. Like a tampon is there for her. Useful. Necessary. Utterly unfuckable. Here's what Schopenhauer understood that modern men refuse to accept. Sexual selection has nothing to do with morality. The genes don't care about your poetry or your promises. They care about indicators of genetic fitness. And in our twisted epoch, being good signals the opposite. It signals weakness, desperation, a fundamental misunderstanding of the game. Picture a man, late 30s, software engineer, six-figure salary, owns his home, remembers birthdays, never raises his voice. He's been single for 4 years. Now picture another man, bartender, sleeps on a mattress on the floor, has 3 DUIs and a cocaine habit, texts her only after midnight. Guess which one she's thinking about while the vibrator buzzes. If you guessed the good man, you're adorable. Wrong, but adorable. The 2024 Behavioral Psychology Review published a paper that should have started riots in the streets. Women consistently reported higher arousal to descriptions of men with dark triad personality traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, even when explicitly told these men would hurt them. The researchers called it paradoxical attraction. I call it Thursday. You want to know something that would make your grandmother faint? Women aren't attracted to men who respect them too much. Respect is what you give to authority figures and elderly relatives, not to someone you want to fuck against a wall. The moment you place her on a pedestal, you've announced that you're beneath her. And nobody wants to fuck down. That's charity work. There's a brutal honesty in observing how she describes the men who destroyed her versus the men who adored her. The destroyers get novels. He was complicated, mysterious. I never knew what he was thinking. God. The way he looked at me. The adorers get footnotes. Yeah, he was nice. Nice. That word is a coffin nail. It's what you call someone when you can't think of anything interesting to say about them. It's the participation trophy of personality traits. When she says you're nice, she's already composing your eulogy as a romantic prospect. In the candlelight of truth, shadows dance like lovers who'll never touch. The good man's curse is that he actually believes the lies women tell themselves about what they want. He listens when she says she wants someone stable, caring, emotionally available. He becomes that. Then he watches her leave with someone who embodies none of those qualities, but makes her feel something the good man never could, alive in her own skin. I knew a woman who kept a journal of every man who ever loved her properly. She wrote their names in careful cursive, noted their best qualities, their sweetest gestures. She called it her Book of Ghosts because they were all dead to her romantically. Meanwhile, her phone was full of 3 a.m. texts from men who couldn't spell her name right, but could make her orgasm from anticipation alone. The cracked mirror of modern dating reflects a truth too ugly for hashtags. Women's liberation didn't free them from wanting dangerous men. It freed them to admit it. The only difference between your grandmother and the girl matching with felons on Tinder is that your grandmother had to pretend she didn't want it. Here's what makes it exquisite in its horror. The good men aren't just losing. They're being punished for qualities that society told them would be rewarded. Every door held open is a nail in the coffin of desire. Every "I respect your boundaries" is a step toward the friend zone. Every "what would you like to do" is an admission that you have no idea how to lead. Kierkegaard wrote about the sickness unto death, the despair that comes from being unable to be oneself. But there's a worse sickness, the despair of being exactly what you were told to be, and discovering it repulses the very people who demanded it. The summer evening when you finally understand this, the air will taste like copper pennies and regret. The mosquitoes will sound like tiny violins playing your funeral march. You'll realize that every woman who said, "I wish I could find a guy like you," meant, "I wish I could find a guy like you who I actually wanted to fuck." Here's my question for you, delivered like a knife between ribs. How many years of your life have you wasted being good instead of being real? How many times have you bitten your tongue when you should have bitten her lip? How many nights have you gone to bed alone, comforted only by your principles, while she's in bed with someone who has none? The graveyard of good men has space for one more. The question is whether you'll lie down in it or burn it to the ground. Where men go to worship themselves instead of women. The exhausted gossip of a man who's seen too much begins like this. I met God once, in the space between my last relationship and my first moment of peace. She was drinking bourbon, neat, and laughing at all the prayers men had sent her disguised as text messages to women who would never love them back. The funniest part, God said, swirling her glass, is that they already have everything they're begging for. They just insist on looking for it outside themselves. There's a cathedral being built inside you right now. Every moment you don't check her Instagram is a stone laid. Every night you sleep without wondering who she's with is a pillar raised. Every morning you wake up without needing her validation is a stained glass window catching light. You're becoming your own place of worship, and it's making you dangerous in ways love never could. The Gnostics believed that the material world was a prison created by a false god, and that true divinity could only be found within. They were branded heretics and burned for this belief. But they were right about one thing. The moment you stop seeking salvation in someone else's flesh, you become unsettlingly free. A 2025 meta-analysis of relationship satisfaction studies found something that should be carved into marble. Men who scored highest on self-sufficiency scales reported not just greater life satisfaction, but were also rated as significantly more attractive by female participants. The very act of not needing her makes you needed. The cosmic joke writes itself. In this cathedral of solitude, strange hymns are sung. They sound like silence at 2 a.m. when you're not wondering what she's doing. They sound like you're breathing when it's finally steady, unpunctured by sighs of longing. They sound like laughter at your own jokes when there's no one there to hear them but the walls, and the walls are enough. Nietzsche spoke of amor fati, love of fate, but there's something beyond that. Amor solitudinis, love of solitude. Not the bitter solitude of the rejected, but the rich solitude of the self-sufficient. It tastes like expensive whiskey drunk slowly. Not to forget her, but to remember yourself. Let me paint you a picture in candle wax and shadow. A man, 43, divorced twice, sitting in his apartment at midnight. But instead of scrolling through dating apps or old photos, he's reading Marcus Aurelius by candlelight. Not for self-improvement, not to become worthy of someone's love, but because the words taste good in his mind. He's become his own lover, his own audience, his own validation machine. Women sense this self-containment like sharks sense blood, except this time, they're the ones bleeding desire. The folklore of every culture has a hermit who holds the secrets of the universe. He's always alone, always content, always powerful. Seekers climb mountains to ask him questions. They never ask about his love, his life, because it's obvious. He's in love with existence itself, and that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Here's the savage grace of solitude. It teaches you that everything you thought you needed from her, comfort, validation, meaning, purpose, you can manufacture yourself in higher quality without the emotional tariffs. You become your own supplier, your own dealer, your own fix, and suddenly she becomes what she always should have been. Optional. The summer air grows thick with possibility when you realize this. Every love song is actually about the singer's relationship with themselves. Every romance novel is about the protagonist's journey to self-discovery. Every "you complete me" is a confession of incompleteness that has nothing to do with the other person. There's a monastery in Greece where monks haven't spoken in decades. When asked why, one broke his silence to say, "We discovered that everything worth saying we could say to ourselves." Then he returned to his silence, smiling like someone who knows where the treasure is buried. The candle burns lower now, casting longer shadows. In those shadows, truth dances. The modern man's tragedy isn't that women won't love him. It's that he won't love himself enough to stop caring. He's been programmed to seek external validation like a moth seeks flame, never realizing he could become his own source of light. Watch what happens when you stop performing your life for an audience. Notice how your interests become more interesting when you pursue them without wondering if they'll impress her. Observe how your thoughts become clearer when you're not translating them into something palatable for female consumption. In this cathedral of solitude, you'll discover something terrifying and beautiful. You're actually fascinating company when you're not trying to be. Your thoughts, unfiltered by the need to appeal, become sharp as winter air. Your actions, undiluted by compromise, become pure as monastery bells. The cracked mirror finally shatters completely, and in its destruction, you see clearly for the first time. Every moment spent trying to earn her love was a moment stolen from the masterpiece you could have been creating with your solitude. Every text sent seeking validation was a prayer misdirected from your own altar. Kierkegaard wrote that the highest and most beautiful things in life are not to be heard about, nor read about, nor seen, but, if one will, are to be lived. But he missed the crucial detail. They're to be lived alone, in the cathedral of your own becoming, where every echo is your own voice teaching you what you already knew but were too desperate to hear. Here's my final whisper, soft as moth wings on glass. What if the love you've been seeking in her eyes was just your own reflection, distorted by desire? What if the cathedral of solitude isn't a consolation prize for the rejected, but the actual prize that rejection was trying to hand you all along? What if being alone isn't the problem, but the solution? What if you already have everything you need, and she was just the beautiful distraction keeping you from seeing it? What if